Welcome to What the Health? The podcast where anything health is fair game. There's a lot of garbage advice and misinformation out there that can leave you feeling stumped and stuck. Together, let's sift through the sea of BS and find the best ways to get healthy and stay healthy. Join the team as we tackle the trends and bust the myths about health and wellness. Here are your hosts, Dr. Dan Turo, Angela Turo, and Dr. Riley Brown.
And welcome back, everyone. I am flying solo as the host today, Dr. Dan, What the Health podcast. And I have two very special guests, Mackenzie Blasco and Denise Stiffler. They have their own podcast that they've been doing about a year now, which is From Rundown to Renewed. So I want to jump right into it and get to know these women a little bit more in terms of how they met and how they decided to start this podcast together. So Mackenzie and Denise, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me. And why don't you give me a little bit of background on yourselves and how you got into the podcast?
Yeah, thank you so much for having us too. We are honored to be here with you. Denise and I, we met probably like 5 years ago through a direct sales company.
Okay.
And then our friendship just continued to strengthen and we were going through some trauma at the same time that was not the same, but parallel. So we really bonded over our trauma. And that led us to wanting to do more with women. We wanted to help and inspire, because if we're going through this, we know that other women are going through this and other people are going through this. Which led us to our very first women's conference that we held.
Yeah, so we do women's conferences. We host a podcast. We actually have From Rundown to Renewed gift boxes that we just launched a few months ago. They are an opportunity to offer like hope and healing and faith for women who are just needing that encouragement and needing some grounding in whatever it is that they're going through. So that's been a real gift as well to put those together and to kind of make that into a ministry as well. So we are just really starting to really cast our net out wide, and we have we're both life coaches. So we both have a passion for, mental health and a healthy mind and all of that, because it's really important. And what you focus on expands. So and like we said, we bonded over trauma. Like we laugh about it, but it was a really dark time. And so we understand that when you are stuck in such a bad mental space, that affects everything. And so our podcast offers a lot of hope and healing.
That's awesome. Well,
in that way. Yeah.
I want to actually speak to the gift boxes, because my wife got two of them for friends, one going through a divorce and one going through a pretty difficult health diagnosis. And the emotional response that she got, that was just very, very real from both of the women she sent them to, was very positive, very healing, like you said. And so I think it's very powerful, what you're doing with those boxes. Can you describe those a little bit more for, like who they would be for? Or
Yeah, so this box is really created to create a space for healing, to have time with God to process everything that you're going through. So it could be for yourself or a friend. And we have a journal that I actually wrote that is in there. It's a 30-day peace challenge, just to truly experience peace for those 30 days. So it walks you through some journaling for that. We've created prayer cards over a lot of strong emotions that women feel. So we point people to where to go in the Bible to read stories, and then we have prayers written for that. We have emotions like shame, guilt, insecurity,
Regret.
anger,
Mhm.
lots of
Yeah.
emotions that we just struggle with
Yeah.
as humans.
Yeah.
And
But like don't want to talk about.
Right.
Like don't, you know,
Yeah.
you show up in a place and people ask you how you're doing and I'm great. How are you? But you're
Right.
not absolutely great, you know? So so hitting on some of those harder things that maybe you're keeping inside, but you really need to release.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then we just have like some fun, cute things like a cute pen, bookmark. We have a candle to set the mood,
The pretty
and
mug.
a mug and blanket. And so just like nice,
Cozy.
cozy
Nice.
things
Mhm.
that we want.
Very good. Does it come with babysitting? No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, that would be great. We are both moms, so we can take care of children.
Trust me, I understand of, the moms needing the time to, to get away and experience that. Well, that's important to touch on because you mentioned some of the emotions that, people generally think of as very negative, right? The fear, the anger, the guilt, the shame. But we live in this world, especially Western civilization, that we don't necessarily have this space to be able to process those and truly feel those. And again, a lot of times, in society, it's like looked down upon. Like if you're experiencing those, like don't bring that near me. That's negative. And yet we're created, we're human beings, so we're created to have those emotions. And if we don't necessarily process them and truly feel them, then you almost get stuck. And that's one thing that I talk about, which is why I really wanted to do this. Was I talk about in the office all the time is, we want to, help correct your challenge, but teach you ways not to recreate it. And we say that all the time. And a lot of times the mental emotional stress that people struggle with, they're stuck in these emotions because they've never been allowed to process them fully. So can you touch on that a little bit in terms of, maybe what you do when you're coaching with someone, or maybe a personal experience of helping someone, truly go through those emotions that they're experiencing through the trauma that you mentioned, to be able to come out more fully, more complete, truly healed on the other side of that.
Yeah, I actually had something. I had a.
And I'm sorry, that's a deep question, I know.
Oh, it's great though. Like
We love
dive.
deep. We don't like small talk.
No.
We like getting down and dirty. So
Yeah.
let's
That's
go.
right. That's
No,
right.
we really do.
Not just the hi, how you doing? Great to see you.
Exactly. Don't talk to me about the weather. Like talk about your trauma. But I have a client. I primarily work with women who are healing from toxic relationships, whether that's a marriage or toxic family systems. I think a huge piece of my life coaching and our podcast and our ministry that we have is we just see women walking around so deeply unfulfilled and like half versions of themselves. And so that's really where our heart is in our ministry and in our coaching. And so I actually have a client who she is also a coach, right? So she has all these tools. She's done a lot of her own healing, but she walked through a really nasty, like traumatic divorce. And she's been out of this marriage for probably like 4 or 5 years now. And something happened. This was maybe like last summer, but something happened and it triggered her. And I've never really seen her as, like, up until this point, like vulnerable or like I mean, we've worked through issues, but she presents herself and she's a very strong woman. She really has done a lot of healing. But this one thing that triggered her, like, kind of brought her back. And like you were saying about being stuck. And so in a coaching session, as a coach, your primary job is to ask questions because all of the answers we have inside of us. Um, we just need to listen. And sometimes we just need to talk these things out. And a lot of times you're going to find the solutions as you're talking these things out. And I saw that in real time with this one client because just by like prompting and being like, okay, but I mean, is that actually true? Is that, or is this like a story? Are you relying on an old story? Because that's what she was doing, And so getting her to see that shift.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Like, this is who I am. I don't have to live back here anymore. And that's what happens when you're healing. like you go back. I mean, it happens. Like you're human and you have triggers and things come up.
Right.
And it's like you think that, we feel a lot of guilt over those things because you think, 4 years out you should be over X, Y, and Z. But it doesn't work that way. And I mean, I'm sure you can attest to this, Dan. Like the body keeps the score. That's a
Right.
very real thing.
Mhm.
And so even for those that have walked a healing journey and have come out on the other side, you're still going to have days where something happens and you're right back to,
Yeah.
to day one or to day 30 or whatever that looks like. And so, um, there's no shame in that. There shouldn't be. There is. We shame ourselves, but there shouldn't be because healing is not linear.
Yeah.
Right. And I think when we're going through those things, we have like such a small lens of what
Mhm.
we see.
Mhm.
And so as coaching and asking these questions, we help them to realize it's not this or that. Like
Right.
there's all this space in between. So
Yeah.
we help them to see that space in between of what, a different perspective or what they feel they are actually being called to or stepping into.
Yeah. And a
And
shift in perspective is like,
yeah.
that's a huge part of coaching is
Yeah.
just helping you see.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of my favorite, cartoon memes that I've seen, you've got the two characters, one on either side, and there's a 6 or a 9 drawn on the ground, and one's looking at it from above, one's looking at it from below, and they're both like, it's a 6. No, it's a 9. And it's like, it's both. It's both and, right? And so being able to help people, see through that process, so empowering. So from the perspective of, because I would argue that we've all experienced traumas in our lives, right? And I love that you said that healing is a journey. I literally, when I sign my book that I give to people, especially new patients when they come into the office, I always say honored to be part of your journey, right? Because health is not a destination. It's a process. And you're going to have the ebbs and flows where, you're going to have, times when you're feeling really elated and positive and joyful. You're going to be having times when you feel completely depressed, and I don't care if you're male or female, like
Right.
child, older, like we all have those times. But it's about being able to understand, well, why are you feeling that way in that moment. And then again, I think the better, just like with training a muscle, the better you get at training, and really getting to the root cause of, well, why am I feeling this, then the easier it is to process through it. But yeah, that can take years, because again, so many of us have never had that opportunity to truly understand what it means to process our emotional intelligence, right, is what I would call it. But back to the you know I think, Denise, you said something along the lines of, you know as a coach, you're helping people understand that perspective, and really, like, the answers are inside all of us. So how do help not only that person, but help communicate with maybe others around that individual? We touched on this the other morning about being able to, like, hold space for that person, and really be able to listen and not try and feel like you have to solve their problems, right? Like that. So I think where I'm going with that. So, as an individual, as a husband, as a father, how can, I help to hold space for my wife, hold space for my children, and not try, especially because, men tend to be more programmed to want to solve problems. How can we take a step back and say, like, okay, I need to be more present and just give the time to talk through, that situation.
Yeah, I think communication is key here.
Yeah.
And like with me and my husband, before I tell him something, I let him know what I need from him. I'm like, I just need you to listen here. Or I'm like, this is a problem I'm having that I would like you to help me solve.
Mhm.
And so going into that conversation, knowing and having that communication, then wives don't get disappointed because their husband's trying to fix it, because
Right.
that's what they want. They love you and they want to fix it for you. But going into that conversation saying, hey, I just need you to listen for a couple minutes and like let me process this out loud with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, like there's, as we've shared, we like really bonded over our trauma. And there would be times where I would like, the amount of bad days I had in a row was a lot. And I remember I'm a verbal processor, so I just need to get stuff out. Sometimes I want your opinion, sometimes I don't. But I would reach out to people and I would just say like, hey, do you have headspace for this today? Because sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And so it's almost like, because I know I'm going to unload and it's not going to be pretty. So, but I also don't want to unload on them if they're having a really crappy day, you know? So it's almost like you're respecting yourself and them at the same time, because you want to honor, you know, you love the people in your life and you want to honor them and you want to honor what they're going through. But you're also your own person. So it's, you know, there's that communication piece is huge, and on both ends of the spectrum, I think.
And what you said there is just so important because, again, I'm seeing, you're talking about it from like the way that we should approach it, but I'm looking at it from the other perspective of what normally happens in a toxic relationship, and whether it's a marriage, whether it's a friendship, a toxic friendship, the one person just says something, and again, they're just totally venting, right? They're having a bad day. I mean, this happens in road rage, right? Like it's like one person's having a bad day, they say something, they do something to and really it's just a release, right? A pressure release valve. They're trying to just let someone know they're crying out for help. Well, now the other person who's also having a bad day, starts yelling back at them, and then they're just spewing this hate left and right, back and forth. And it's just this vicious cycle that begins. And I mean, it's almost demonic, right? Like it really is. I mean, that's in my world, like I truly believe that, that's how the devil works, right? He wants to whisper in your ear and say, this is, just completely, this is the lie. This is the, just let it out. Like, they need, and then you just get this lie upon lie and hate upon hate that just gets back and forth. And then, it just perpetuates on and on. And the only way that that can be broken is, doing exactly what you're saying is, no, I'm going to be the one, to, take a step back, reflect, retreat, reflect, and then actually, have a conversation about it. So, I mean, that's coming from such a loving standpoint, Denise. And I mean, it was probably a lot of work that you did to get to that, right? Where you're actually asking someone, do you even have the ability for me to, vent with you for this time frame right now? But I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't even know if there's a question in there, but like, I see that all the time. And right. And then you get this stuck, right? You're stuck in this cycle. And I see that in my own office, right? It's like you're trying to heal from, some sort of physical pain, but because of the emotional stickiness that you have, you're not through it. And, one of the greatest examples, I had a patient who was just in a very, very terrible job. And we see this all the time. They're in a terrible job. And we do thermal scans in the office where we're looking at temperature deviations, which actually show, neurological, rigidness, right? So they're stuck physically. But then, we'll do an adjustment. They'll change a little bit, then they'll be right back. But it's like we get to the root of it, like they're in a toxic job and then they retire or they change jobs. And it's like, boom, their scan completely changes. So there are physical expressions of, emotional, baggage or, emotional, elatedness, right? So yeah, being able to walk someone through that, I think is very important. Sorry, I don't know if there was a question in there, but
Keep going.
Can I add something
yes,
there?
please.
You're talking about the physical aspect of it, and also something that we don't think about is our brains and how neuroplastic they are and how they can change. We can change the signals inside of our brain. So, these, like you're saying, road rage, and someone has this belief that, everyone is against them or whatever they have. All of that comes from a childhood thing that you took and made mean something in your head. Okay. It could have been a lie at first, but then your brain finds evidence of it over and over again.
Yep.
And now it's a belief inside of you that you're living with, and it goes into every area of your life. So we really have to get to the bottom of the thoughts that you're having in order to rewire your brain and to get unstuck from the cycle that you find yourself in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Wow. Yeah, that's so, I mean, and that's not easy though, right? Because like, trying to break a habit, yeah, I think of something like, someone who smokes or, someone who is addicted to alcohol or, or pornography, like, just go down the list of, the deadly sins. And it's like, we're all addicted to that. We literally have a lot of that, trauma hardwired in our brain as humans, and it's not easy, but it can be changed, right? But you need to, you need to like literally download a new a new system, a new belief system. And when you do that, then not only do you just have to download it because it's not just like a 1 day thing, but then you have to, all the time that it took the trauma to get hardwired in there, you have to hardwire the new belief system, which takes time and repetition, that the world isn't against you. And, there might be like a demonic or an evil force that is there. And I think it's a lot easier to believe that there's a spiritual warfare going on, for our soul. And, it's not, me that's or any other individual that's evil. But it's the lies that, we're all told, that we end up going down this pathway of just the vicious cycle, the evil cycle, right? So
Denise and I have a whole series on the armor of God, going through the spiritual warfare and the pieces of armor that you should put on. So
Yeah,
check that out.
it's really it's one
that
of my
out of
favorites.
Ephesians.
Yes.
I love it. That's one of my favorite. Yeah, right at the end of Ephesians. I love that. I'm not very good with like actual like where, like
That's fine.
but yes, I know what you're talking about. Well, that's fantastic. So talking about this alignment a little bit more, obviously as a chiropractor, I love the
I'm sure that's the
idea of
favorite word of yours.
alignment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've heard I've heard sayings like the longest journey that you will ever take in life is from your head to your heart, right? And so when those things aren't aligned, you get disorder, you get chaos. So how can we as individuals, we as people in our relationships, help to better recognize when, the head and the heart and the gut are out of alignment, and, steps we can take to get back into it.
So I think this goes into like in the coaching world, like they refer to these things as like your parts, right? And so like your head, heart, and gut are all separate, but they either work together or they work against each other. And like for me personally, my head and my heart are always kind of at war with each other because my head wants to protect myself and my heart is like, but look at all this lovely things, right? So I think what happens, and this is where shame comes in, and this is where all of these kind of negative emotions come up because, or if you want to call them negative, but these like challenging emotions come up because you don't have peace within yourself. And that's gonna, jack up your body. It's jacking up your mind. It's your whole mental and emotional health is bad. And so I think it's so important that you almost like need to, well, you don't need to like, or you okay. Compassion is really important for all parts of yourself, right? So like if my head is in protective mode, okay, well, that's not mean. That's my head is sensing danger or potential danger.
Right.
And so my head and my heart and my gut are almost always like on the same page, but it's my head against those two most of the time. And so, and I think that's probably true for a lot of us. So how can these three parts talk to each other in a way where they like everybody can see all sides of the spectrum, but they can find like a common ground. And there doesn't need to be shame or like, oh, well, this is bad, or oh, well, you're just too flighty, or you know what I mean? I think we do that. We just shame ourselves in these situations, and that is what keeps us out of alignment, I think. And so just having conversation with, like, pretend you're in a boardroom with all three parts. What are they saying to each other,
Yeah.
right? Because all three parts love you.
Yeah.
They're not like trying to hurt you. They're trying to help you, but they're coming at it from a different angle.
Different perspective, right?
They're coming at it from a different perspective. So how can you find a common ground
Yeah.
for your head, heart, and your gut so that you can walk in alignment with yourself and with God if you're a faith-based person, right? Like, so seeking truth,
Yeah.
getting back into the word, because a lot of the times we are believing a lot of lies, and that's where our head, heart, and gut can get stuck too. So combating that with truth is really important as well. It's a huge piece of it. But yeah, I think, from a coaching and faith-based perspective, you have to just like, this is where like kindness for yourself comes into play. And a lot of us aren't really great at that because we're all our own worst critic.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird at first when you're like, well, what do you think, head? And what do you think, heart? Like, I mean, it's kind of a goofy, it sounds really, really weird. But like when you do it, it's like, oh, okay, I didn't see it that way. Like, or oh, that's an interesting thought. Like the shame can be wiped out
Yeah.
because the kindness starts to come in.
Yeah.
Well, and
Well,
you have that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And those are all protecting mechanisms. So
Mhm.
recognizing all of these parts want to protect you in some way.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
why do they feel like they have to protect you? Go back to where does that
Where the root.
where is the root cause of that?
Mhm.
And there's healing that needs done there.
Right.
Yeah, that's very, yeah, that fight or flight, right? If you have that traumatic experience, we always, talk about it in the healthcare world. We always talk about like that fight or flight response is really designed to save our life, right? If you're, living off the land in a, hunter-gatherer tribe and, saber-toothed tiger, you're down by the water hole, saber-toothed tiger jumps out of the bushes. It's like you either need to fight or run quickly to save your life, right? And that's very much the hardwired neurological response. But even from an evolution standpoint, it's almost like it's the animalistic brain, right? And it's just kind of like automatic, right? They call it the autonomic nervous system, because it's automatic. You don't think about it, like it is just hardwired, ready to go. But what happens is, okay, you have that experience. So now every time you're down by the water hole or every time, you're, near some water, you're like, constantly looking over your shoulder. And, we have that in our own relationships, right? Like, someone, whether it's a mother, a father, a preacher, a teacher, right? We've all heard mother, father, teacher, preacher. I've heard those four sayings, but, a brother, a sister, someone along the way, hurt you in some way. And whether it was intentional or not, many times I would argue it's not intentional, but whether it was intentional or not, they hurt you. So you're now constantly in every relationship that may mimic that. You're looking over your shoulder like, okay, when is the hurt coming? And so now again, you've locked that cycle into place. And it takes, it takes inserting that, that new belief cycle that, no, oh man, that balance between protection and, and oh my gosh, I don't even know how I would put that, right? Protect, what would be the opposite of protection? I mean, you said compassion, right? And just, really putting yourself out there, right? Versus, the fight, you're constantly, you're putting the fist up, you want to, you want to fight or you want to protect yourself versus the compassion is, putting that heart, stepping out into, the unknown and, truly trying to, help someone through something. But if you're not in the space to be able to do that, yeah, I mean, you just enter right back into that cycle. So, wow, I mean, fantastic, fantastic conversation. Like, I seriously had no idea where this was going to go, but I mean, these are just all such important points because we can just see so much of that, what we experience throughout our lives, it can really set the stage for, how we react in different situations. so being able to help someone through that from a coaching perspective, and then being able to see that in all of our relationships, our marriage, our friendships, our college or colleague professional relationships, our networking relationships, like all of that. We can really, come with more value by understanding that process more. So I guess, so how does that then, we talked a lot about emotions, and I know mental emotional health, I think is just so integrated, right? So how do we look at this if someone is, has no idea where to start, or they've heard some of this and maybe it's like, oh yeah, that sounds like me, or that sounds like someone in my family, or a child, a mother, a father, like, how would we start the conversation, or what steps can someone take to, maybe start down the path of just, analyzing, like, hey, maybe I need a coach, maybe maybe I need to process some of this. Would that be a good question to pose?
Yeah, absolutely. And, Denise and I are both life coaches and work individually with people. So we have coaching opportunities where our first call is free and we are
Yep.
able to see if we would be a good fit for a person. Um, I would also highly recommend therapy. They work really well
They go hand
together.
in hand for sure. Yeah.
And coaching, like we said, is all about asking questions and challenging perspectives, but therapy goes to those root things for healing also
Okay.
in a more deeper way.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate that on a little bit more? Because yeah, I was actually going to ask that question at the beginning when you brought up like therapy versus coaching. And again, I know like you just said, they go very hand in hand, but could you elaborate on maybe some of the differences and why it might be beneficial to do, both?
Yeah. I mean, like she summed it up really well, like with because we have both been in therapy, and a lot of our therapy has been the deeper kind of getting to the root of what are these beliefs that have kept me here, and that's like the deep work. It's kind of like therapy makes you go back in time to heal yourself today, and coaching is you're dealing with the past, but you're looking more towards the future. So that's really how they go hand in hand really well, because you're going to start healing these parts of you that you might not even realize. I mean, some of the things that have come up in therapy, I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, but okay, And and I'll also add on to that something that you said in like just the last time you were speaking about just like these cycles that we find ourselves in, right? When you start to heal, it's like you are starting a new cycle. So you need evidence. Like if you've been in bad relationships, and like Mackenzie said, what you focus on expands, you're going to keep finding bad relationships until you break that cycle. But your brain is going to need evidence that you can have good relationships. So it's almost like you like for a faith-based person, like you pray like, Lord, put people in my life that are actually like solid and good and loving and kind, because it's going to be a little bit of a culture shock for you. When you're used to all this bad over here, but then you're experiencing this good over here, it's like, whoa. But because that's not the narrative for you.
Yeah.
So that's a huge piece of it too, is consistency. And a lot of us just want to go from A to B like that, and it doesn't typically work that way in the mental and emotional space. It's a lot longer most of the time.
That journey, right?
That journey.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. It's a journey. There's really no destination. There will be like cool little markers you'll make along the way, but there's really no end.
Yeah.
There's always work to be done. But like you said, when you're practicing these things, you just get better at it. I mean, I had a like kind of a goofy day a couple days ago, and like things that might have taken me like days or weeks to get past, it took me the day.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay. And I recognized it. It was like, ooh, it didn't take me nearly as long. That's great. Like, and so being aware is huge, 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 huge.
Well, if I could follow that up with just a personal story, because there would be times, earlier in my marriage where, I'd be in the office, and Erin is, my wife is very, very integral to the office, but then also, she's, also runs the household. And so like if I would get home from a long day and, there would, be stuff, everywhere from our kids, the house is just in chaos. And at the end of the day, or like I would be cleaning up at dinner and I would, be starting to, to do the dishes or something. And I would literally just have these, negative thoughts just ruminating, like, why wasn't this done? What, why, this should have been taken care of. I was gone all day. Like, and it's just like, and it took, and again, I go to a men's group every Saturday. I call it my therapy session because it's absolutely incredible. I know I can show up at 7 a.m. every Saturday morning, every week of the year. And, there's a group of men, anywhere from, 15 to 20 of us that are going to reflect on scripture and talk about how it applies to our daily lives. But when I recognize, right, you said the awareness, Denise, when I recognize that whisper is literally the evil, the demonic, the trying to whisper to break my relationship with my wife. And when I recognized that and, could say, nope, I'm doing this to serve my family, to, serve my children, serve my wife. And I have the opportunity to do this, and be a part of service as to work as a team in my family. Man, does that change the narrative, right? It's so, you go from like, why is this my responsibility? Why wasn't this done? And just ruminating in that negative thought process, to where it could get so negative that then, you've got the toxic, like lashing out, at your child, at your dog, at your wife, to the, no, I have the opportunity to do this. And, my God, how blessed am I to have a roof over my head, have a gorgeous kitchen and a sink to be doing dishes in, to be cleaning up after an amazing meal that I just had. And now it's like you start the cycle of healing, of positive emotion, of love, of joy, of service. And again, that's the download that we're talking about. And that's the journey. It takes a recognition, it takes an awareness. That's the beginning, right? Once you actually recognize it, you can do something about it. But and unfortunately, I think a lot of times in our society, you talk about like, in addiction, right? A lot of times people have to hit rock bottom, before they make a change. So I was very blessed in that situation that I didn't have to hit rock bottom. I didn't, say something that couldn't be unsaid, like, but being able to, become more self-aware is so important in all our relationships, not just marriage, but marriage or our childhood relationships with our children. If you don't have kids, your partner, your friends, your family, your clients, like all of that is so important to be able to self-reflect rather than just react.
Right.
So I
And
thought I
that,
wanted to share that, that story because that popped up in my head there. But anything else that you two want to share? We're probably at about a little over a half hour now. So, I mean, anything else? I mean, I know we could talk all day on this stuff.
that's really good. Yeah.
Any other like personal stories or anything that, you wanted to sum up about what we hit on today?
I think I would like to challenge people if that's okay.
Please, I love
While
that.
you're talking, I was thinking about the people that they are self-aware and they're like, yeah, I know I need to work on these things, but I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
Or
That's
like
real too.
it's going to be too painful to bring up the past and I don't want to have to deal with those things. So I guess I just want to provide encouragement that it is hard. It is hard work. I'm not going to lie to you, but it is 100% worth it. And we are called to live an abundant life.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to work through those things in order to live out that abundant life and step into who God is calling you to be. So I just want to give encouragement to people listening that may be worried to
Yeah.
unpack.
Yeah.
And I think like to tie into that, like I think it's really important to just ask yourself, like, if my life is like this in 5 years, am I good with that? Or 10 years, right? Like, because a lot of us, like, we want more fulfilling lives, but we accept status quo because we are afraid. We are afraid to dig stuff up because what is going to come up, and it is scary. I mean, like, I totally honor that. We've walked very difficult roads the last few years, but I can tell you that it is worth it. I mean, it's gritty and it's not fun, but
Yeah.
I would do all of that work to get to here all over again.
Yeah.
Because it is a fulfilling life. And so do you want fulfillment? Do you want abundance? Do you want a joy-filled life? And if the answer to that is yes, and you're not in that, then what does need to be done on your end? How can you step into who you're called to be?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, I think that's a great place to, to kind of finish up and just wrap up, because if you have no idea where to start, right? I always tell people, like, I don't know if I can help you, unless you come in and we have a conversation on where you're at and what's going on and do an evaluation. So, like, I would, strongly encourage anyone listening to this to, if you don't know, just have that conversation with Mackenzie or Denise. Again, just to reiterate, the podcast is From Rundown to Renewed, which you can find on Spotify and all the major channels, right? So, but yeah, like, just to reach out and just start that conversation. What have you got to lose? A little bit of time, I guess. But yeah, the ability to work your way through that, especially as we celebrate, mental health awareness coming up in the month of May. Hopefully someone hears something that they heard on here and it resonates them. And I'll put the link to your podcast in the description underneath our podcast, so that they can click over to both of you as well. And I have listened to a couple episodes of Denise and Mackenzie, and wow, they really dive deep into a lot of very, very good topics, sharing personal stories and stories of clients that they've worked with. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity to talk with you both. And do you have another conference or something coming up that people should be aware of, or they could find on your podcast?
We will keep you updated in the
Okay.
process.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
We are.
Very
but if you follow us on Facebook and Instagram and everything, you'll be the first to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
awesome. And they can find you on From Rundown to Renewed on Facebook and social media.
Yep.
Yes, Facebook and Instagram. We have,
All right. Well,
Yep.
This is Mackenzie and Denise from Rundown to Renewed. Thank you so much for joining us on the What the Health podcast. I am Dr. Dan. We will see everyone at the next one. Take care, all.
You've been listening to another episode of What the Health? The podcast where anything health is fair game, with your hosts, Dr. Dan, Angela, and Dr. Riley. Brought to you by Churro Family Chiropractic. If you'd like to learn more about some of the resources mentioned on this show, or you have questions about something that was discussed, please reach out through our website at www.turofamilychiropractic.com. Remember to like and subscribe to What the Health podcast to catch all the latest episodes and replay your favorites. Thank you for listening, and remember, we're always here to help when you find yourself saying, "What the hell?"